right, well, welcome back to another episode of Dog Pod, brought to you by Dog Cloud. And today, it's probably a pretty special weekend, actually, should mention. That's Anzac weekend, and it's a little bit fitting. We've got someone from Australia, and we've got a special guest from New Zealand, our Kiwi friends across the ditch. And I want to introduce Doggy Dan, as he's known. He's the creator of the Dog Calming Code. He's helped over 57,000 people successfully train their dogs through his online courses with the simplest, gentlest, and most logical way to change their dog's behaviour. I've been inside the course myself. I love it. The content's amazing. Dan's been featured as a celebrity dog trainer on the Real Housewives of Auckland. I bet there's a few stories there. And over 100,000 people from all around the world subscribe to his blog. He's written numerous articles, keynote speaker. And today we'll talk a little bit about, too, some of the stuff from his book, too, which is titled, What Dogs Taught Me About Being a Parent. So, Dan, welcome, mate. Happy Anzac weekend, if you can call it a happy thing. But it's a fairly significant weekend for a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand. So how did you guys celebrate?
Oh, we were actually at a festival. So something called the NZ Spirit. It was a festival near us, and went there with my wife and children, and made some beautiful connections with some lovely people. But beautiful to be here, Scott. Good to be chatting with you.
Yeah,
always love to chat.
Great to have you on. No, mate, and thanks for being with us. There's a lot to talk about. I've been really impressed with the content of your course, but I guess probably more importantly is the overarching philosophical approach. And it's probably something I'd love to chat about today, because I think a lot of people with dogs understand the nature of the leadership they should try and have with their dog. But one of the things I'm sort of seeing more and more, being in the dog business ourselves, is so many people treat their dogs like humans now, like family, and they try and almost, and there becomes that sort of really difficult thing where they makes it very hard for them to train their dog to behave the way they want to, and they try and make them such loving members of the family. How do they balance that? That's probably a good place to start. How do you balance that love that you bring? And, you know, I mean, people are giving them human names now, and they get all the amazing, you know, merchandise that goes around the dog.
Brian the dog. David, Alan. I love talking about dogs' names and human. Yeah. It's a good place to start. It kind of, my mind is already jumping back to my book, What the Dogs Taught Me About Being a Parent. And I guess the thing about that book is we've all been children at some point in time. So we can all remember what it was like to have whether it was a teacher at school who was in control, and we kind of loved them, partly because they were in control. They kept control and they were directing the class. And we've all had adults who maybe shouted and bawled and screamed and shouted, and we didn't love them so much, and everything in between. So we've all been children, and many of us have been adults who are listening to this. Many of us maybe been even parents, and most, if not everyone's got a dog. So there's a lot of similarities we can draw out from being a child, being a parent. And here's the one which jumps out at me, I guess. Just because you love your child and you give them lots of things that they want, doesn't mean you're a great parent, and doesn't mean you ain't going to have big, serious issues. In fact, you could say that the more you just give what your child wants, the bigger the problem's going to be. The more you spoil your child, we all know this, the spoiled little whatever. So we know that with children. You can't just love. Oh, little Billy wants some more ice cream. Little Billy doesn't want to go to bed. Little Billy wants to watch his iPad in bed with his ice cream and shouts at the top of his voice because he wants chocolate on the top. And now he's... So if we take that analogy and apply it to dogs, just, you know, giving what the child or the dog wants isn't enough. And that is half the problem we've got with these dogs. You know, they get what they want, and then we have major issues. I mean, I was sharing this story with somebody else the other day, and I think it summarizes a lot of, you know, what I do. I mean, I've worked with 3,000 people, like I say, in a one-on-one capacity at their home. and 57,000 people online have used my program. But this is one story which really stands out. The lady rang me on the phone, said she had a problem. The dog, it's a small dog. I think it was a dachshund or something. And she said the dog is barking at night. We can't stop it. We've done everything, she said. I thought, okay. And I said, describe the situation. Are you on your own? No, my husband and I, the dog sleeps in the bed with us, and he actually sleeps on my husband's pillow, sort of on his head, because that's where he likes to be. And he barks, and we try and shut him up, but he won't. And he's barking at any noise now, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. He's waking up, he's up 5. And we've tried this, we've tried that. And I thought, okay. And she talked and talked and talked about all the things they'd done. And I just stopped her and I said, Margaret, can I just tell you the real problem you have? And she said, what is that? I said, the real problem that you've got is your husband has a dog on his head. And she stopped. She went, I don't fully understand. I said, Margaret, the real problem is your husband has got a dog on his head. And she said, oh, you think that's kind of connected? I said, Margaret, imagine that was a German Shepherd lying on your husband's head. It's not good. It's not right. Just because the dog wants to be there. And and that's the state we're at. People don't even see that that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's
like
what the dog wants.
Your teenage kids sleep on your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds ridiculous.
So people, as humans, we don't make these connections between what we're doing and how the dog's responding or behaving. It's quite It's actually quite comical, to be honest.
It is. And look, I'm guilty of it, all sorts of things as well. So I'm sure we'll get into that. But mate, let's backtrack a little bit because you've got an interesting background. How did you were a civil engineer, police officer, maths teacher, selling IT. How did you end up as a successful dog trainer?
Yeah, I guess I had all these jobs because I always wanted to help people. So, even building bridges, I guess, as a civil engineer, I thought, that's helping people. I just enjoy practical helping, talking to people, using my brain and the hands, I guess. But there was no jobs in civil engineering. Maths teacher, I kind of thought, gosh, I'm not going to last the distance with all these kids. And police. I could do all these jobs, but finally I thought I wanted to find a passion before I died. I could do the job. It was paying okay. I was fairly happy, but I wasn't waking up in the morning going, this is my purpose in life, and I'll die happy if I do this. And so I went to a careers advisor, and she sat me down and went through a bit of a mental technique for seeing what my key memories were as a young boy. And even though we never had a dog because my mum was terrified of dogs, she spotted that dogs kept popping out all through my life from the age of 2 or 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. When I go back in my memory, that's what comes out, that I played with dogs before school, and I used to go and visit my grandparents who had a dog, and I played with the dog all year. And we had 7 dogs on our street, which all began with the letter B: Bernie, Baron, Barney, Ben, Billy. I just remember it. Dogs. She said, dogs is your thing. And so I've always been one of these people, but I've been a bit of a dog with a bone. When I go for it big style.
Yeah.
And I just started devouring as much information, techniques and methods as I could, and finally kind of came up with this one.
How did you formulate your philosophy and approach to dog training? Because I think the alpha style training, that I think some people get very confused by that. So it'd be worth maybe explaining that. Because
totally.
Sometimes it feels, I think a lot of people confuse it for an over dominant approach, and it's, you're the exact opposite of that, I would describe, right? So
I'm as gentle with the dogs as anybody, and same with my kids. I don't smack my kids. I don't smack my dogs as a training technique. I don't use shock collars, prong collars. I don't use sprays. I actually have a philosophy that the greatest trainers use the least amount of force.
Yeah, I like that.
I truly, but I mean, the greatest trainers are not using shock collars. That's my humble opinion.
Yes.
When you are absolutely so connected to the animal that you can communicate to the animal and bring through that love and that deep connection, like Dr. Dolittle, and you can laugh, but It's possible. I believe anything's possible. We don't have to be putting a current through our dog's throat, through our neck, through the neck. And yet the flip side of that is I'm also not, I don't believe bribery and corruption and treats is the key, because it's not with children.
Yeah.
Chocolate and treats and sweets and giving your kids iPads as a reward only gets you so far as a parent. There's more to it.
Yeah.
And I kind of go, well, surely that's going to be similar with children. I mean, with dogs. And when you look at the best dog trainers in the world, or the ones that I respect, I see a lot of similarity there,
Yeah. Yeah.
Monty Roberts, the horse whisperer. I mean, there's a lot of horse whisperers, but the best ones, Buck the horse whisperer, they're not using force to control these huge animals.
Yeah.
They're using the mind, the heart, the energy, the body language.
Yeah.
And a horse is, as my wife says, it's 500 kilograms of feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't manipulate that quite so easily. And so in the horse world, the greatest horse whisperers really have learned to connect without using force.
Yeah. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Whereas, and you can see it. Dogs. Yeah, that's my direction.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this method, it's based around Jan Fennell's. She's the dog whisperer, dog listener. Let's get that right. But it very much looks at leadership as not being something where you beat your chest and you scream and shout, but you win the dog's mind. And I often think the best analogy is probably, I say little old lady, just because they are generally not as physically strong as your 28-year-old male school teacher. So that older female teacher at school who could control the whole class, you'd say, put your pens down, be quiet, and put your books away. And she just had control.
Yeah.
It wasn't through fear or dominance or chest beating.
Yeah.
She'd won their hearts and their minds, and the best ones didn't even threaten. They were loving, kind. Everyone was on side. So it's that approach. How do you establish that? And it comes back to trust and respect and love, and making sure that the dog knows that you've got their best interests at heart. And there are a number of things which you can do which says, I am in charge. So it's kind of being the decision maker, the one in charge, a bit like a parent at the end of the day. But you still respect and love the children and the dogs. You don't hurt them. But you're making the big decisions, just like in our house. My wife and I make the big decisions, not the kids.
Yeah.
Same with the dogs.
You're the ones creating the boundaries and
making the big decisions, whether to go that way or that way, whether to jump in the car or go and get an ice cream, or whether to go to the beach or not go to the beach. All those big decisions. And people end up in trouble when, around the house in particular, they let the dogs make all these decisions. Then lo and behold, they don't want the dogs to make these decisions.
Yeah.
Dogs go, well, I think that's a problem. I don't like that person walking so close to our fence, and I'm going to bark at them. You can't turn it off, not until because at the end of the day, here's the basics of the philosophy. The dogs, when they live with you, it's not like a shoal of fish where everyone's equal. There's ones at the top and there's ones at the bottom. That's how it is. Just like a family. Mum and dad make the big decisions. Yeah. And the families who've got real problems with their kids are probably the ones where it is like a shoal of fish. Dad has got no more control over the kids, or no more authority or right to make a decision as the 6-year-old child. Yeah. They're the ones that have the trouble because nobody's listening, nobody's respecting, nobody's loving, nobody's. Yeah. So the method comes back to how do you actually establish leadership with the dogs without using force, fear, aggression. Yeah. And some of it is so simple, as you're probably experiencing in the website. You watch it and you go, oh my gosh.
Absolutely. And I mean, and it's a difficult thing, and I don't think we should go into this over the podcast call here either, but your 5 golden rules are very simple to apply. And I guess one of the dangers of being on a podcast, we've got very limited time, and people will be either listening to it, but we don't have any dogs here to demonstrate. So I won't ask you to elaborate on it too much, because it's just, I think the devil's in the detail, right? And a little bit of information can be dangerous, and people need to fully see it and see the reactions of the dogs and spot the behavior that you walkthrough, and I've found it incredibly good, and just some very simple, practical things. I'm pleased to say my dog got the feeding bowl thing right, so I'm on the right track with all that stuff.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of good things sort of happening with that. But I wanted to, and I'll actually just plug the sites too, because people need to check this out. If they're having any issues with their dog, you got to go do these courses. It's so good. So you got the online dogtrainer.com, and you've got dogtraineracademy.org. Is there a difference between them, mate, or?
Yeah, so the online dogtrainer.com, that's THE, in case people find my accent a bit weird. So the online dogtrainer.com is where you can go and basically experience all my videos, everything, all the courses. I think there's 6 courses. You can experience them all. And there's a trial there. So you can trial it for $1. Have a look at it. If you like it, stay on. If you don't, just cancel. I don't mind.
Yeah.
But I'd rather you went in and went, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
This guy is the real deal. This is gold. And 57,000 people have used this program for a reason, because it works. Yeah. Because, I mean, we've got thousands and thousands of testimonials of people who went, I just did that tiny thing. There are hundreds of videos, but you don't need all of them. And that's why we start you off at the start, going, just put the basics in place.
Yeah, I like those little basics you have as that kind of prelude, kind of intro kind of course almost, that sets that foundation for it all. Because, I mean, we've got an 8-month-old Australian stumpy tail cattle dog crossed with a Kelpie, high energy dog.
Wow.
And she's been going at it and barking around the backyard. It's mainly birds that set her off. One neighbour's been a bit funny, but most of them are pretty good. There's dogs everywhere too. So one dog barks over there and they all set each other off. And it's, but she's just, even with that little technique that you teach there, within a day or two, like, it's just so different, and it's really quite simple to implement. You've just got to put the energy in. So I've actually got a couple of questions from our
Can I just jump in quickly? That last question. Hold on to that. The other question you asked was the Dog Trainer Academy. .org.
The difference.
Yeah. So that one is for people who've pretty much watched the videos in the online dog trainer, go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to work with dogs. I want to become a dog trainer.
Right. Okay.
So after loads of people asked me, can I become a dog trainer? Can I train as an understudy?
Yeah.
I decided I'm going to just do this. So I videoed literally consultations. So you can actually watch me going into a consult. I'm only there for 2 hours, the whole thing unedited, and I walk away. It's like it's like Doggy Dan TV show, basically.
Yeah.
But without the editing. Even my mistakes, I left them in. You can watch the whole thing, but lots more, and you can become a dog trainer. So there is a lady in the US who's earning $250,000 US a year.
Using your
and she'd never
IP.
trained dogs before.
Fantastic.
She had never trained dogs before until she went to the dogtraineracademy.org.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And that makes me smile.
Yeah,
because she is a lovely, lovely lady, middle-aged lady, and she's knocking it out of the ballpark by helping people.
Yeah.
So going back to your.
Yeah. Well, Dan. Let me start with this. What are the most common issues you see people come to you with all the time? Is it the excessive barking? Is it the destructive behaviour?
Yep.
What are the top 2 or 3 common things that you just see all the time, consistently, with the way dog owners continually raise their dogs?
So the big ones are probably barking, which obviously could be barking when the dog's left it alone, barking when you're driving down the road in the car, barking when it's, walking down the street. So there's lots of different types, but just boisterous behaviour, barking, noise. Pulling on the leash is quite a big one. Mm-hmm. Pulling. Not coming when called. That's almost just general obedience, but just coming and not. Dog aggression is another one.
Okay. Excellent.
I mean, people aggression's way less than dog aggression. So yeah, they're probably the big ones.
And when you go about identifying sort of the source of the aggravation, you kind of look at it. I really like sort of the psychological sort of approach that you kind of bring to this, and this can probably drift into your parenting style and stuff with kids as well. But what is it you sort of, how does your brain work? Like, what do you look for first, and how do you sort of then go about identifying it? What could people sort of take away as a bit of a framework?
Sure. So here's the framework of my psychology, the way I see the world. If you think of the world, you know, these animals, these dogs, they are beautiful. They're equal to us, in my opinion. They're not lesser, they're not more, but they are different. In terms of, I can show you a calculator, and I can explain to you what a calculator does, and you will understand it. Dog, probably not so. Mm-hmm. They just don't live in this human world. They don't speak English the same way as we do. So they're always going to be a little bit confused of the man who, in the dark, comes knocking on the door and delivers a box with meat in it and dough. And it's a pizza man. What's he doing? You know, the dog doesn't understand these things, or why we suddenly start shouting into a mobile phone, getting all stressed. The dog doesn't understand there's another person on the other end that we're communicating with. Or why do we suddenly start screaming at the television?
Because the footy's on.
So, because the footy's on. So, think of it like that. The dogs are not. This world is a little bit confusing for them. Some things they can't figure out. That man in the high-vis vest pushing the groceries with that trolley with that 4 wheels on it, making all that noise that's coming towards him, is simply a man who works for the council who's in a high-vis vest who's just been shopping and is going to put the stuff in the car.
Yeah.
To a dog, it's weird, it's strange. Never mind if the man's got a big bushy beard and an umbrella. I mean, whoa.
Yeah.
So we understand that, the dogs don't. So where we're coming from is there's a lot of things where the dogs are having to make decisions, and depending on the temperament of the dog, I mean, if the dog is super confident, super relaxed, super easygoing, chilled out, hey, I've no idea what that guy is doing coming towards me with that trolley and a big beard and an umbrella, but no worries. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
But when you have a dog who's trying to make a decision about that, who's nervous, who's first, because of their DNA, because of how they were raised, because they were a runt of the litter, because they were attacked by another dog, that's the story. I don't care about the story. I'm just saying where we are right now, you got a dog who is scared, who is nervous, whose first line of, process is, let's just sort this out,
Yeah.
The dog, if it's going to make the decision, makes the wrong decision. And this was where the psychology is all about, well, rather than trying to retrain the dog with cheese or a shock collar not to make that decision, how about we actually went a totally different way about this? Rather than saying, if you see a man with a trolley, and how about we make it so the dog just looks to you because you're in charge, and then you say, just through your body language, just ignore.
It's okay. Yeah.
And you go, well, it wouldn't be that easy. Oh, it is that easy. It is that easy. I guarantee it's that easy. All the people who learned this method as a dog trainer go, oh my gosh, it works.
Yeah.
57,000 people on the online dog trainer go, oh my gosh, it's working. Because dogs can read the body language, but they will only take any notice of it if they see you as the one in charge. Yeah, the problem we got most dogs are going, get behind me, owner. I'm in charge here because I sleep on your head in the bed and I do all these things and I'm in charge at home. I'll protect you from this man coming. And then no amount of chicken, cheese, or bacon is going to get the dog to come back. Because this is real, serious life and death stuff to your dog. So, in my opinion, most of the dog training, the approach is completely wrong. We're trying to retrain dogs who think they're in charge. If we went about it and said, well, why don't we say to the dogs, you're not in charge?
Yeah, just look to me. And I find it so fascinating. I want you to tell me a bit about, because so much of this is the energy of the owner, right? And you talk a lot about the energy. Like, can you expand on that a little bit for us? Because it's watching your videos that the really gentle, calm approach you have. It's almost spellbinding the way the dogs respond to it, isn't it? And that's what you're talking about there. Is they really do just look to you for direction, and if you're calm, I'll be calm too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds too easy. Yeah, totally. I mean, the analogy or the story I remember as a kid, which I keep going back to in my mind, is when I was about 6 years old. I say 6 because I was holding my dad's hand. He was up there, and he's not that tall, so I was a very little boy. And I was in England walking in the woods with my dad, and we came out of the woods, and there was a church in a clearing. And there was all these gravestones around the church, and the wind was blowing around leaves around the gravestones. And I remember going, this is not good. This is horror movie stuff. I've seen this. Church, gravestones, leaves, wind. Uh-oh. And I remember looking up at my dad, and he was just yawning and just, oh. That was all it is. That's all it needed. I still remember it to this day. He didn't say a word. I didn't ask him. I knew we were okay.
Yeah, that's a great
And
example.
somehow that memory stuck with me. That is the power of trusting somebody explicitly, implicitly. I'm not sure what the word is, but and just body language. He was fine.
Yeah.
And so I think I've forgotten the question you were asking.
Oh, it's the energy and how the dogs respond to that calming nature. So
yeah,
so much of the training for anyone listening is all going to come back to themselves.
Yeah, right? Same as being a good parent.
Yeah,
you know, it's easy to blame it on the child. The child, that's the situation you're in. But what can you do? What can you change as a parent, as a dog owner, which will transform your dog? And so I guess the opposite of that situation is, I did work with a lady who had a dog who was, she said the dogs got very stressed and did weird things like weed on the bed. I said, okay. So what was happening when the dog just weed on the bed? Did she just do it? And of course, the first reaction is, yeah, she just jumped on the bed and started weeing.
Yeah, there was no reason. Yeah.
No reason at all. I thought, okay, well, let's dig a bit deeper. And this is that blindness that I'm talking about, that people can't see nothing.
Yeah.
And I said to her, so what were you doing? She said, well, I was getting ready to go out because I'm a jazz singer. So I was singing and I was late. So I was actually running around the house because I was looking for my shoes and I could only find one. And I had one shoe and I didn't have the other one. So I said, okay, so you're running around, what, panicking or, oh God, yeah. Oh, I'm screaming for my shoe. I'm shouting to my husband going, where's my shoe? I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. And I said, okay, so you're racing around the house screaming for a red shoe because you're going to be late for your jazz singing. And your dear dog gets on the bed looking at you, probably terrified, going, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. And I don't know whether the dog peed itself out of fear or just marking, because they'll do stuff like this just to say, hey, I'm here, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
But it's connected.
Yeah.
And so that's the opposite of being calm and it solves the problem. Go crazy hyper and you create all sorts of problems.
It makes total sense. Hey, I've got a couple of questions from our listeners, and I wanted to, just probably now is good timing for one.
Yeah.
Mel on the Gold Coast asks, what's with dogs that paw at their water bowl? Is it a territorial thing? Because they seem to only do it when they're either around other dogs or what's with dogs and the way they paw at their bowl? I'm sure there's probably multiple reasons, or...
You know, you've got me there, Scott.
No, oh, cool.
I mean, people can see this is a genuine show. We haven't planned it because that's a question I've really...
I've heard it.
I'm good at making stuff up.
Yeah,
I'm good at making stuff up, but
I'm a territorial thing, and we had an 8-week-old puppy come over on the weekend just to socialise a little bit with ours, and it's actually my wife's brothers named the dog Bruce.
Good.
And they were playing a little bit together in the backyard, and ours has probably been a bit heavy-handed puppy, rough housing and stuff like that. But yeah, it's this pawing at the bowl, and we've seen it before with some other dogs, but I don't know, it's just a interesting one. I'll have to...
No, look, I'm not even going to speculate. It could be 2 or 3, 4 things.
Episode 2.
It doesn't, episode 2 doesn't feel like a massive behavioural issue. More of an instinctive thing.
Yeah.
You know how dogs will do a lot of instinctive things, such as...
Yeah.
Often they'll go around circling in their beds and stuff, and people have a theory, which I can kind of imagine it's to do with checking maybe for snakes or stuff like that they kind of check the bed out before they lie down in the long grass. Yeah. Whether it feels like that sort of behaviour, but I honestly don't know.
I mean, I've seen it at dog parks and stuff as well. I guess the only concern for some people might be, obviously, if they got a dog and maybe they bring a second dog into the home and it happens perhaps and they're both out of water and their dogs dehydrate while they're at work for a day. That could be a concern, obviously.
Oh, you mean the dog is literally emptying the bowl of the water?
Yeah, pouring in it, knocking the bowl over.
Got it. That feels like a lot of dogs seem to do that for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
That makes
seen a
sense too.
lot of dogs do that for fun, which is a tricky one.
Yeah.
Um, you'd have to figure out a way of putting a box over the top of it so the dog couldn't get its claws in. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
tricky.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard. Or just get one of the more advanced feeders or whatever it might be.
yeah, yeah.
I got another good question here too, and this is an important one. And I've gone through this recently with, and you've got kids, so you'll know a lot about this. Carrie from Brisbane, they've got a first-time puppy coming with 3 young kids. They've got a spoodle, so she's asking any tips and advice you have for particularly spoodle-specific training, but with young kids, what sort of tips and advice do you have with training new dog into a home with kids?
Okay, 3 things before I forget them. The first thing is honestly, hands down, just go to the onlinedogtrainer.com, join up, pay $1, do it before you get your puppy, because there's so much information in there that you want to get into your brain so it's automatic before your puppy turns up. Because here's the thing, when the day the puppy turns up, you will not want to be sitting in front of a computer screen watching videos.
Yeah, agreed.
So before, you want to do the training before you get a puppy, just like before you get a newborn baby,
Do the
you want to
homework.
know what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
So, and the program in there is super powerful. I've got my puppy Moses. It's called Project Moses. It's Moses videoing him from 8 weeks right through to 8 months. The second thing is spoodle puppy training isn't that much different from all the other puppy training, especially when the puppies are all so a little small and cute and they all mouth and bite and pee and poo and don't sleep through the night.
Yep.
The issues are all the same. The solution's all the same. So any tips is the third thing. It's tricky because one of the key things is to actually start treating the puppy the way you want to train the dog later on. So you want to actually start with what I call the dog calming code straight away, which is laying, people say to me, or there's some dog trainers will actually suggest you do things that you don't want the dog to do later on. I mean, I'm talking about things like even mouthing. Train the puppy to mouth you. And then when it gets about 10, 12 weeks old, start telling the puppy not to mouth you. I'm like, oh, hang on, why?
Right. Yeah. That
And I understand the theory is that you train bite inhibition, but the number of people who end up with training the puppy to bite and then they can't stop it, or it just becomes a bit of a.
Yeah.
So I just redirect the puppy's biting onto stuff that you want them to bite.
Yeah.
The other thing is to make sure your puppy does have a safe place to go. Because these puppies are so cute and adorable, but they get so tired so quickly, especially if you have very young kids.
Yeah.
It's just not fair for those puppies. They're just terrified, traumatized, exhausted.
That's really good advice. So what, a crate or even just under a couch?
Crate, box, room, anywhere where the children are not allowed. When the puppy goes there, children are not allowed there. And you watch after 10, 15 minutes of playing, and it will be 10 or 15.
Yeah.
Puppy goes, I'm done.
Yeah.
I want to sleep.
Exhausted.
And if you leave the puppy will sleep.
Yeah.
But it's not fair for the puppy to be constantly grabbed and pulled and pushed and pulled and made to.
I've had that issue myself, Dan. I've got obviously the 8-9 month old puppy, but I've got a 2-year-old just turned 2 last Friday, and
congrats.
a 5-year-old turning 6 next month. And and the dog's asleep on the bed. Kids are going over, annoying her, wakes her up. It's just. And it's like, and I found the hardest part with all of this is you're trying to train kids to train the dog. That's probably the hardest challenge I've had, is trying to teach the kids what needs to happen to be able to give consistency with the puppy. That's been the biggest challenge for me. Have you got any tips around that sort of stuff?
Well, you got to train your kids first, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm only joking.
No,
I'm joking.
No, mate, I'm still working on it.
I'll be honest, this doesn't help people who've got 2-year-old children and a new puppy turning up. But that is the lethal. That's the most.
It's hard. It's hard.
That's the worst combo. Yeah, because what you got is a 2-year-old who's basically got no empathy, but can walk.
Yeah.
And falls over on the dog when they get to the bed. So they walk over to the bed. 1.5 years old, 2 years old, flops on top of it, sticks its head in the dog's head face.
Yeah.
So look, I'm just pointing out how, especially if you've got a large breed dog like a German Shepherd or something, who's going to be by 8 months, That's going to be a
Pretty
big
big.
jaw,
Yeah.
powerful jaw.
Yeah.
So there is a point where you have to go, look, just for the next 6 months, 2 years, we just have to keep an eye. We have to be vigilant.
Yeah.
And you just have to be practical because you can't teach a 2-year-old not to do A, B, and C.
No. No,
You
it's
can't.
really hard. Yeah.
Same as you can't say to a 2-year-old, don't go near the fire. It doesn't work. You got to put a fire guard up or keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
So there's that practical nature of this until they're at a certain age. And then there are some basic stuff that you can train. Try and get the kids to call the dog over to them rather than constantly going up to the dog. I mean, that's so super powerful.
Yeah.
Leave the doggy. Leave him
Yeah.
alone. If you want him to come, call him. If he comes, cool.
Yeah.
If
Love
he
that.
doesn't, leave him alone. He doesn't want to come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. And what about feeding dogs, particularly when you've got young kids too? Because I think a lot of people worry about the whole nip and the bite and stuff. And we kind of moved beyond the little nippy bitey stage now. Kids learnt a couple of little lessons about that. But we've been, and tell me if it's the wrong thing, but every now and then, not all the time, we'll get the kids to control the dog, sit, put the dog bowl down, get out of the way, dog to wait, and then tell the dog to go and eat. We've been doing stuff like that just so that
That's great.
the dog knows, the kids are still giving instructions just like we are. Is that the right approach?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be careful giving advice around food and children.
Yeah, of course,
so
absolutely.
With a message,
totally get that disclaimer.
Yeah, so huge disclaimer coming up, but don't try any of this at home. But basically, the parents have to take responsibility for every interaction because the lethal combination is children, dogs, and food.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
absolutely.
for example, when it comes to birthday parties around here, we stick our dogs in the back of my car and we drive it up under a tree, and it's very cool where we live, and there's wind blows through the car, so it's totally safe. Or we put them in my office and put the air conditioning on.
Yep.
We keep them separate because children, dogs, and food, it's going to go.
Yeah.
But around that food bowl, when parents are present, the key thing is that the parents keep as much control so the dog feels like the parent is doing it, and then lead the child into as much of the feeding as you feel is safe, because it's so different with a 5-6-month-old little spoodle compared to a 18-month-old male
Great Dane.
German Shepherd dog, Great Dane, who's
Doberman,
starving, loves his food, and
Yeah.
hasn't quite got the manners down to a T. So it's almost, whilst these are good rules and good training, everything, especially around the children, has to come back to the parents' responsibility.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. No, and we only do it supervised as well, of course. So we always sort of stand there as well. And that's I wouldn't leave the kids do it unsupervised.
The other thing about that is I don't even really get my children to do much more than feed the dogs. I literally say to them, this is all you do.
Yeah.
Tell the dogs to sit, put the bowls down. I keep an eye on them.
Yeah. And that's it.
Okay. That's it. And my kids are 9 and 10 years old. So that gives you an idea of what I'm trying to get them to do, because there's no point in seeing if my kids can take the food bowl away from the dogs. What?
Yeah.
I mean, it's only going to go one way. If it works, it works. So what? Well done. What are you going to do? Make a video and post it on YouTube? No.
Exactly.
If it goes wrong, well, what were you trying?
What do you expect?
What were you trying to do anyway? So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of things in our minds we kind of go. It's almost like an acrobatic. It's like trying to walk the tightrope. We don't need to do this stuff, so don't do it. And a lot of the stuff with dogs, you hear about, you should be able to do this, you should be able to do that. And hey, if you can, great. It just so happens with my dogs, I could pretty much do anything.
Yeah.
Even my monstrous big pack leader, alpha dominant male dog, I could take the food away from him, and whatever. I don't really do it. I don't need to.
No,
and
you don't need to, but he knows. Yeah.
He knows. Stay safe. Stay safe. Yeah.
Dan, your book title is interesting. What dogs have taught you about being a parent. Tell us some of the insights, I guess, you got about parenting that you learned through your dog training. I'm kind of fascinated by the similarities of it. And I think because I've got young family, and I think a lot of people introduce a dog into the home when they've got young families too. And I get the whole, raising a family with a dog. It's a beautiful thing to do. but it comes with a lot of challenges. But I'm just really curious about some of the lessons on parenting that you learned as well from your dog training.
Yeah, I mean, the big one is probably the big one is that, you know, in the same way you can blame your children, we touched on this, you can blame your dog, but basically that doesn't get you anywhere. It's about saying, what can I change as a parent or as a dog owner? So that's the first key bit. Then there's the chapters in the book are things like your dog is your mirror. You know, I've seen unbelievable kind of similarities where somebody says, oh, my dog doesn't like this or doesn't like that. But, you know, they have this, the dog has the same fear that they have, because what's happening is the person's getting all stressed or frustrated. And the dog gets the same thing. There was one lady, she lived on a road where there's a lot of Harley Davidsons went past. She said she hated them. However, if a big truck went past, the dog was fine.
Right.
The lady didn't hate big trucks either, but she hated Harley Davidsons.
Right.
And so did her dog. Hated Harley Davidson, but was fine with the lorries and the trucks, which came past and made way more noise. So do you put
that down to the energy again? Just picking up, the dog's picking up on the owner's energy?
Yeah, so the dogs can pick up your energy way, way more than we can on each other. Generally speaking, humans are pretty numb. Because if you think about it, you know, when the wolves or the dogs, you know, even dogs will still got that natural instinct to pick. You know, if the wolves can breed, the dogs can breed with the wolves. And if you go to the wolves or you look at the dogs, they all know how to pick and what instinct is. And they know how to pick the weakest animal out of a pack. They know who's weak, who's strong. So they're so aware of who's got a limp, who's scared, who's nervous, who's awake, who's confident.
Yeah.
Whereas as humans, we go down to the local supermarket and wander along in our slippers and dressing gowns, chucking food into the trolley. We're not tuned in. We're not physically 100% on the focused and concentrated. So the dogs just pick up when we're getting stressed. You know, when we're getting fearful. When, you know, my dogs used to. One of my dogs used to get. If there was a fly in the room, she'd fly. She'd walk off. I couldn't work it out until I realized it was because I was doing podcasts and I got my mic here. And the fly flying around would get me frustrated. I'd be like, oh. So then I realized I only had to do a little tut and a fly comes past and she's like, oh gosh, she's getting stressed. She'd walk off.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
Super sensitive. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So that's your dog is your mirror. The other one is things like, there's a chapter called Timeout is a Beautiful Thing. And, you know, when we're training dogs, there needs to be some way of saying to the dog, hey, if you carry on doing that and they keep pushing the point, there's a negative consequence coming. And so I use timeout. Just put them in a bathroom, toilet, laundry room. Dogs get it. It could even be the room they sleep in at night, but it's the same as with my children. Kids, if I have to ask you again, I'm going to put you in your bedrooms.
Yeah.
They don't hate the bedroom. They still love the bedroom. But if I put them there during the day for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And even when you do timeout, it's how you do it is the most important thing. Stay calm. Just put them in.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's the sort of things in the book that I cover off.
Yeah, and I saw that with the I saw that with one of your barking dog videos. Just the use of timeout, incredibly effective, and it's amazing how dogs get that. Because you know, if you said that to me before watching your videos and seeing the actual dog's reaction, I wouldn't have thought timeout would work with the dog. And I mean, I've had dogs my whole life, from a young kid all the way through to now, and I've never used timeout. I've used it with children. I think it's incredibly effective with children. But with dogs, I never would have expected that worked, and it just works so incredibly well. But is it the calm approach? I mean, I know you've just said that anyway, but is there anything more to it that you do with a dog? With kids, I find you sort of, you know, can sort of
with timeout, you mean, or
with
generally?
timeout? Yeah. Is it just you just put them into timeout and just give them a chance to calm down and just let them?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with timeout is if you think about the words the lone wolf is because the wolves, they want to be in packs. And
Right.
we all know dogs love to be with their owners. They just want to be with you anywhere. They follow you around. They love being with the family. They just love being in groups and packs. And
Yeah.
so that's why it's powerful, because when they're on their own, they know they're in trouble or they're separated, they're alone. They love to be connected. They're
Yeah.
pack animals.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of why it's so powerful. When you actually put them in timeout, I'd recommend just, it's your energy that you do. Here's the thing. When you put them in timeout, if you kind of put them in timeout in such a way that's almost saying, oh, well, you're in timeout again. You don't say anything, but that's the sort of energy you're doing it with. You're putting, you haven't frustrated me. You haven't annoyed me. You're not going to wind me up. You're not going to win this, but you are going to be in timeout.
Yeah.
And if the dog comes out and goes, rah, 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 you just take them and put them back in there this time for 20 minutes, not 10.
Yeah.
The dog will know not to mess around. But if you kind of do it with a kind of, get in there, the dog, all sorts of things can be misinterpreted, that the dog thinks you're stressed or worried or panicking, or you're not the calm leader. There's the Rudyard Kipling poem which says, if you can keep your head whilst all around you are losing theirs, you're a man, my son.
Yeah, I love
The
that.
dogs love, the dogs love it when there's a problem and you step forward as the calm pack leader, the
Yeah.
one who's calm. They love that, and they'll respond and go, yep, we trust you.
I kind of feel like dog calming code could become perhaps the greatest personal development course for humans. It's almost
There's
like
a,
the
yeah,
next Anthony Robbins of courses.
there's
Because
a few people have said to me, does this work on my husband? Will it work on my husband?
put the husband in timeout. Hey,
Yeah,
I want to ask about teaching old dogs new tricks.
yeah.
There's that common phrase, and obviously we all understand what it means. Um, does it change as dogs age and get older, when habits become a little bit more ingrained and sort of more deeply rooted? How do you approach it differently as dogs move past puppy stages into sort of more mature years?
I'd kind of start by saying it doesn't. It's the same.
Yeah, so I was
Generalizing it.
curious. Yeah,
Yeah. Because, especially with the dogs who, sure, they get older, so physically you need to be aware of, they may need more comfortable surroundings, less walking. And when they're young, they need more exercise and stuff. But the actual social, kind of the social structure that they have of who's in charge, who's making decisions, doesn't change really.
mm,
A lot of the older dogs, as they get older, they do kind of give up a bit easier as well. So older dogs are almost looking. I often go to work with 8-year-old dogs. People are just like, they've been trying for years. Yeah, we had puppy training. We did puppy training. We had this train around. And then a few years ago, we got this. And then it's just got really bad. We've moved house. And now it's a nightmare.
mm,
He's 8 years old. He's done it since he was, 3 years old. And I just go, this dog is just wanting early retirement. He just wants you to say, I got it. And you put the dog calming code in place. And so there's also this thing of some dogs are just like waiting to be told you can have early retirement. You don't have to keep, barking every time a person walks past the front of the house, charging out the front door, running up and down the
yeah,
garden, barking at the fence. You don't have to be on 24/7 security guard looking out the windows. You can sleep,
yeah,
meditate, switch off for
yeah,
hours and hours and hours. My dogs are a great example of when dogs are really switched off and relaxed. How many hours do they sleep for? I mean, my dogs do 8 hours sleep a night. And then during the day, out of that 16 hours, they'll probably sleep for 12.
yeah. Wow, yeah,
And that's because they're relaxed. They're just so happy and relaxed. They're just,
yeah. That's great. That's great.
so,
So
yeah.
and we'll bring this to a bit of a close in the next few minutes, because I mean there's so much more we could go into, but I love your approach. I feel like so many people need to just jump on and do the courses. It's inexpensive for what you get out of it. It's just the you will shift the way you manage your dogs and raise your dogs. And I look forward to finishing off the rest of the video. So I'm still about halfway through it.
Awesome.
But what overarching advice would you give someone, I guess, as they, regardless of age of dog, but as they're frustrated, they're looking for change, and part obviously do the course is probably the most obvious thing, but is it practical? How am I putting this? And it probably comes back to actually a second follow-up question that maybe Carrie had is, what does a daily schedule look like in terms of time and attention and training that you should give a dog? Particularly, does it change from puppy to older dog? The consistency is key, right? Or am I wrong? Do you just need to teach it and then that'll go away as well?
Okay, there's a lot of questions there. I'm kind of going, all right, I could come from a lot of angles. No, it's all good. It's all good. Here's because there was something jumped out of my mind when you were asking one of the earlier questions. It was, what would you suggest people should do? You got to try something different. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, which kind of goes back to the other question about, can you teach an old dog new tricks? Of course you can. Problem with most people is they keep doing the same thing and then go, why doesn't the dog learn? Well, same reason it didn't learn when it was 3 years old. Why doesn't the dog learn? Same reason it didn't learn when it was 6 years old. Stupid dog, he's dumb, he doesn't learn. No, he's actually a super smart dog, and you've got to figure it out. But if you keep doing the same thing and don't figure it out, you don't figure it out. Then somebody like myself turns up, tries something totally different. Hey. So the sort of schedule is actually, so that's one thing. I just had to say that. If you've been trying food, treats, I can train your dog without treats. It's not about treats. 95% of the dogs I work with, I don't touch treats. There's no treats. And the ones I do, it's generally just a bit of recall to say, well done. Good dog coming.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'm just trying to think, the actual training, the amount of training needed is so small. It's not about hours and hours of training. It's understanding how to reverse the whole, for example, the pats and cuddles, as I say. So many of us are just, dog comes over, kind of climbs on top of us or puts his paws on our lap and we give him a cuddle. But you've just ruined it all. You've just given your pats and cuddles and affection away for free. Your dog won't work for them anymore. That's what you're going to use for recall as a reward. Your dog's invaded your space. Space is super important to a dog. If you can invade another person's or dog's space, you're above them in the pack and you'll be far more protective of them. It's exactly the same as the reason you don't go up to your boss on a Monday morning, put your arm around them and ruffle their hair and go, hey, you have a good weekend, boss. Hey, you have a good weekend, mate. You don't invade the ones above you. You don't invade their space. And if you do, it's because you're above them. So just turning that stuff around and understanding you can give your dog pats and cuddles, but you call the dog to you first. And that doesn't actually take any time. It just means the few times, every couple of times an hour, you call the dog comes.
I love these little examples you have of just how wrong we get it. We have that. I'm a classic of that. Sitting on the couch, we could be watching something, dog comes up, paws are up on that. Now it's trying to get up on the couch, and I don't let it. I don't want dogs at the couch. I don't let them eat at the table, or any of that sort of stuff.
So my brain's immediately going, it's that simple. You push the dog off once, twice, you don't say a word. If it does it a third time, put it in timeout. Finish. Done.
Right.
Oh yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Move the dog off. Put the dog in timeout. Boom. Now, there's only a few dogs which will continually persist, and they're the ones that you've got some of the real underlying basics all wrong. So the dog says, don't tell me not to get on the couch. I'm the king. I'm in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why you do have to have this foundation program. But once it's in place,
yeah, I love it.
Stopping the dog getting on the couch is that easy. Yeah. So
so just in terms of training time, and we're sort of touching on that. Yeah. You're talking it's not hours and hours of training. How long? And we know puppies, especially like let's say Carrie with an 8-week-old puppy, it's going to wear out very quickly. Are we talking just 5 minutes of training, then just let it go, and then come back to it later in a few hours, let it have a sleep? Is that, how do you...
It's not like that at all, because it's more like training a child.
Yeah, it's
How long does it
situational.
take to train? Yeah, how long does it take to train my child, my baby? How old's
Yeah,
your baby? 3 years old. How long does it take to train it? 20 years, my dad said.
yeah,
He said it takes 20 years. Once they're 20, you hands off and they're done.
yeah,
And with a dog, it's probably 2 years. And the equivalent is 2 years old. Once the dog's
yeah.
2 years old, you pretty much, that's it. You just maintenance.
Right.
But even in
Yeah.
terms of, so when my dad and mum were training me as a child, how long did it take?
Mm.
It's not, it's not,
Yeah. It's not the
it's,
right question. It's more
it's not the right
situation,
question
more.
at all.
Yeah,
It's
understand. Yeah,
sure, my dad used to sit down and help me with my algebra, my maths, and we'd sit there for 40 minutes. But was that actual the parenting, or was that just doing maths homework? That was just doing maths homework.
yeah,
That's not what won the love and trust and respect. And it's the same as just doing sit down stays with your dog. You can do it for 40 minutes. You haven't won any trust or respect.
yeah,
You've just got food and you're pushing sausages into your dog's mouth every time his bum hits the ground. Great.
yeah,
There's only a certain amount of respect that's going to get you, no matter how many times
yeah.
you do it.
And I've done the food training thing, and my dog, you know, her name's Luna, and I can get her to do absolutely anything when I've got food in my hand.
Yep. Yep.
Like, I mean, she'll drop, she'll roll over. I
Yep.
can get her to put
Yep.
put her chin down to the floor. I can get all that stuff. I don't have food in my hand. She's not interested. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
a classic example
And
of how to do it wrong.
tying it back into
Oh,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
true, right? I
Yeah.
can admit it. I'm comfortable with that.
And tying it back into a previous story about my dad when we came out of the woods and those gravestones and leaves blowing around.
Mm,
My dad won my trust and my respect. And all I did was looked at him and he
yeah.
didn't panic. How long did that take? That training?
Mm, yeah. Moment. Just a moment in time.
So it's almost,
Yeah.
and that's this method. This method is not about saying how many hours of homework do you have to do with your children to train them. It's knowing at what point does it really matter that you just hold that place of calm, peaceful, loving
Yeah.
energy with your child, or do the right thing with the puppy or the dog.
Yeah. Look, I just love it. And I think I can sort of see two mindsets that us as humans bring to this when we hear your approach. One will be one of resistance, because the one that has to change is the one in control of things. But the huge benefit I see is just a much calmer head of the house in general, in terms of you're so much more conscious of bringing your best, calmest self to dealing with the situation, which would normally cause stress in
Yeah.
yourself and then further cause stress in a dog, which only makes it worse, and the cycle continues, right? So I see your approach as this incredible sort of interjection to just break a cycle of stress that just continues
Yep.
and continues. So, mate, well done on what you've created. I think it's a fantastic approach. I love the gentleness of it and the love of it. I think it's super. So, mate, thanks for having been on board with us today, Doggy Dan. And
Yeah, no, you're welcome. There's a good reason we called it the dog calming code. And it's because, it really does bring calmness throughout, like you say, the whole house. So,
look, mate, absolutely. And look, thanks
Been
so
great
much
to be here.
thanks so much for your time on this Anzac weekend. And mate, all the best for the rest of the year.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. And for those of you who are listening, theonlinedogtrainer.com.
Yeah,
That's the site.
And if
Thanks,
you want to
Scott.
follow in Dan's footsteps and become a dog trainer, dogtraineracademy.org. That's the
That's the
.org.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate,
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks so
It's been
much,
fun.
Dan. It was great chatting with you. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.